obviously you're on to talk about your big pledge for climate change. I think probably the thing that will prick people's ears up more at home is your leader, Jo Swinson, saying she would rather have another general election straight after this one rather than support any other party in a hung parliament. You can sort of hear the groans of the nation, can't you, as Jo Swinson promises another general election?
Well, she's not promising it and she doesn't want it. What she's saying is that if we can't find people in Parliament who are going to work for the Liberal Democrat agenda of stopping Brexit, tackling climate change, investing in education, then we won't be able to support a minority government. But we actually hope in the Liberal Democrats, and Jo's very clear on this, that we believe we can do so well in this election that we could be forming that government.
What, on your own?
Why not?
I mean, because the polls are so low for you, they've been slipping.
Well,
it's you talk about fantasy budgets and fantasy ideas from the Labour Party, but actually this is a fantasy ambition, isn't it? Do you have to be a bit more realistic?
Well, first of all, the polls are very volatile and we've seen major changes in other elections in other countries. Why not here? But even if we don't win, even say we've got a very large number of Liberal Democrat MPs, which we expect to make quite a lot of gains off the Conservative and Labour Party.
How many are you looking at, out of interest? How many do you think you can have?
Well, we're not going to put a cap on it because we think we can do even better than most of the pundits are saying. So we think we can have a huge clout in the next Parliament. And if we do, Liberal Democrat MPs will vote for Liberal Democrat policies. Top of the list is stop Brexit. But as I'm coming on your programme today, there's an issue that's even bigger than stopping Brexit, and it's stopping climate change. Liberal Democrats have the best record of any political party in government tackling climate change. We quadrupled Britain's renewable power. I, as Climate Change Secretary, helped make Britain the world leader in offshore wind renewable power. And if we're in government or have a say in the policies of the next government, you can bet with Liberal Democrats you'll be tackling climate change and tackling the climate emergency.
Hang on, if it's bigger than Brexit, then why is it on ballot papers you're going to be putting Lib Dems vote us to stop Brexit actually on the ballot paper?
Well, because that's what the voters are talking about. But in our
so it's not really bigger than climate change, is it, in this election?
Well, what I'm saying to you is stop Brexit, of course, is very big for the voters, and we've got a very clear position on that. We are the Stop Brexit Party. You're absolutely right to say that. But what I'm saying to you today in terms of Liberal Democrat policies, we believe climate change is as big an issue, and that's why we have this very ambitious programme of £100 billion to get transport cleaner, to get homes better insulated, people save on their energy bills. And you've been talking about flooding. We need to build the flood defences, where the flooding is being caused by climate change. So we have a holistic programme to tackle climate change, to save our environment, and I'm very proud that the Liberal Democrats are leading on the climate change agenda.
I tell you what would be really, really beneficial would be the £22.5 billion that you confirmed for the nuclear park being built in Hinckley when you were Energy Secretary, which, of course, has now gone over budget by £2.9 billion. I mean, interestingly, you're talking about the fact that you were there as Energy Secretary and you were supporting renewables. But actually, at the time, you went with this. You went with the nuclear energy plant as an option. And now we can see that a few years later that actually renewables are far cheaper. Because actually, that sort of sticks in the throat a little bit. It must do for you, Ed. If you could go back, would you reverse that decision?
Well, let me answer. First of all, it's thanks to Liberal Democrat policies that we've had such a big increase in renewables and the cost of renewables have come down. That's Liberal Democrat policies, and I'm glad you're recognising it was so successful. But on nuclear, let me take that head on. The Conservatives were very keen on nuclear. Actually, they signed the contract after Liberal Democrats left government. But I'll tell you one thing I did on nuclear, because I was actually pretty sceptical of aspects of the nuclear programme. I ensure that if there are cost overruns, as indeed there have been,
because £2.9 billion
because history has shown that, I ensured that those cost runs wouldn't hit the taxpayer or the consumer. The person who's going to have to pay for that is EDF, or the French taxpayers, because of the way I structured the contract. So I'm actually really proud of that, and I'm really glad you brought that up.
No,
let me finish this. Very, very important. Because of what I did as Liberal Democrat Energy Minister, I ensured that the dangerous cost overruns of nuclear, which I predicted, won't hit the British taxpayer and won't hit the British consumer. I'm proud of that.
If you could go back, would you reverse that decision, though? Or would you rather insisted at the time, despite the expense that it seemed to be for renewables back in 2013, that you'd pursued it a bit further and not gone with this nuclear plant there?
It's a very interesting question, but one's got to actually recognise what was happening at the time. Back then, renewables were £140 per megawatt hour per unit of electricity, where nuclear was just over £90. So you had to make a decision on the economics then. Moreover, the storage technologies that we're going to need for renewables, because the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, those storage technologies back in 2013 were in their infancy. Now, no one's more delighted than I am, particularly because I gave a real boost to storage technologies, that now we can see a future where renewables are cheap, where the storage technology is there so you'll still have power when the sun isn't shining, the wind isn't blowing. And that's a Liberal Democrat achievement. That's how we tackle climate change. I'm proud of that. It's really good Liberal Democrat messages, and our investment in climate change will really help tackle the climate emergency.
What message are you giving to voters when you've got this Remain alliance with Plaid and the Greens in, I think it's 60 seats, where you're saying just vote for the one Remain candidate. You've stepped aside and others have stepped aside for each other. And yet, in places like Canterbury and High Peak, where your own Lib Dem candidates chose to step aside because they could see that the very slim majority, say, for example, in Canterbury, is for Rosie Duffield, the Labour MP, with just 187 majority that she's defending, that actually she is the best-placed MP for the Remain side. And yet the Liberal Democrat Party is now introducing disciplinary action against Tim Walker, your Lib Dem candidate who stood down. There is a mixed message here, isn't there? That it's OK for HQ to make alliances, but actually the conscience of your own candidates in their local areas is to be trampled all over.
Well, let me help you, because it's not a mixed message. First of all, you're right to say that we've worked with the Green Party in the Plaid and Independents, where they've got a very strong Remain record, and we've made an agreement, and that's really, really strong. But in areas, the ones you're talking about, it's not as simple as people think. Many of the people voting for the Liberal Democrats in places like Canterbury are former Conservative voters, lifelong Conservative voters, who can't stand Brexit, who are worried that the Conservative Party have teamed up with Nigel Farage and have gone very extreme, and they're voting Liberal Democrat. However, the question is, would they transfer to the Labour Party? And all our research shows that they would not, because those Tory voters, former Tory voters, are actually more scared of Jeremy Corbyn than they even are of Brexit. So there's a real fallacy. There's a real fallacy here that people think that Liberal Democrats can get all our voters to switch to the Remain candidate in a particular seat, and that's just not true.
And do you think it's fair on the voters, for example, in Canterbury, that you've now replaced Tim Walker, who stood down, with a candidate from something like 77 miles away in Dorking? She's literally been handpicked, this lady who you're now putting into Canterbury. I mean, what kind of offer is that? Somebody who's never lived there, doesn't know the area?
Well, let me be frank with you. We didn't know that Tim Walker was going to stand down, did we? And I don't know in your business, if someone stands down right at the last minute, if it's really easy for you to find a replacement.
And should he be disciplined?
So we were really practical. We found someone who's really well qualified, who's on our approved candidate list, and they don't live that far away, and they're going to be very committed and move into Canterbury should they win.
OK. Would you go into would you support a Labour government in a hung parliament if they got rid of Jeremy Corbyn as leader, yes or no?
Probably not. I'll tell you why. They'd have to change their policies as well. It's not just about Jeremy Corbyn, although I agree he has some huge problems because he's so left-wing. But the real issue for the Liberal Democrats is, are we going to stop Brexit? Are we going to stop climate change? So fundamentally, when you're in Parliament voting on issues, you've got to stand by your Liberal Democrat policies and your Liberal Democrat values. And we've made very clear what our message is. And the problem I have with both the other parties is they're not very clear about what they want to do. You know, with the Conservative Party, Brexit's going to go on for years, because even if Boris were to get elected and get his deal through, he's then got years more negotiation of the trade deal. So Brexit's going to be with us for a huge amount of time if you go for the Tories. And on the Labour Party, we have no idea what they really believe on Brexit.
Okay.
At least with the Liberal Democrats, you've got a clear message: stop Brexit.
OK, Ed, Davey, we're going to have to leave it there, but appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.